What is my favorite contradiction in the Bible?
I don't know, but I bet you're about to dish out something that's not even a contradiction to begin with. Hi, this is Lucas from Deflate, where you learn to answer the skeptics' objections to Christianity. And today we're faced with this really tricky contradiction related to the story of Jesus' crucifixion.
Let's talk about the story of Jesus being given wine while he's up on the cross. Starting with the Gospel of Mark, they tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. On to Matthew, this time they didn't try to give him wine, they gave him wine. And it wasn't mixed with myrrh, it was mixed with gall, or bile. Gross. While in Mark said he did not drink it, in Matthew it says he tasted it and was unwilling to drink it. Now in Luke, they mocked him and tried to offer him sour wine. A little less detail to the story, and it doesn't say whether he drank it or rejected it. Now watch what John does. Shabam! John blows this story up. This time, Jesus says, "I am thirsty," effectively asking the guards for a drink. Now pay attention to how much detail he puts here. There was a jar full of sour wine that was standing there, so they put a sponge full of the sour wine upon a branch of hyssop and brought it up to his mouth. Therefore, when Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, "It is finished," and he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. He doesn't reject the wine like he does in the other Gospels, he drinks it. Now let's get into why exactly that is. So first notice how in just 2 sentences the wine is called sour 3 different times. This is almost certainly not an accident. In the Bible and in extra-biblical sources, the cup or wine is often symbolic of God's wrath. Remember that in Luke's Gospel, Jesus prays that God would remove this cup from him. A lot of early Christian writers had a problem with how human this made Jesus sound. Mark's solution was to leave it out entirely. Matthew's solution is to water it down a little bit. John leaves it out as well, but seems to incorporate it into this passage. Now he's asking for the wine, and even though it's bitter, he still drinks it. And after he drinks it, he says it is finished and gives up his spirit. In other words, he's no longer afraid of God's wrath like he is in the other Gospels. He welcomes it, which is consistent with the rest of John's Gospel. Anyway, there's my favorite contradiction in the Bible. Here's a little graphic with all the references in case someone tries to tell you that the Gospels do not contradict one another. And as always, hope you enjoyed.
Well, yes, I enjoyed that big time. So, boiled down to its essential, this TikToker's case is the following. In Matthew and Mark's crucifixion narrative, Jesus does not drink the wine offered to him. And while Luke doesn't definitely say whether Jesus did or didn't drink the wine, the Jesus in John's Gospel definitely drinks it. Thus, Matthew and Mark contradict John, because Jesus cannot have both drunk and not drunk the wine. Given that Mark was the first and John the last gospel to be written, the argument goes that the fact that the Johannine Jesus drinks the wine is due to John wanting to make a theological point about God's wrath. And for this, he supposedly has to flip Mark and Matthew's accounts on their head. Now that's a slam dunk for sure, such a blatant contradiction. How come no one in the last 2,000 years ever saw this? I mean, thank God we have TikTokers nowadays whose rigorous scholarship enlightens us so powerfully. Only too bad that there really isn't a contradiction to begin with. Here is why. In Matthew and Mark, Jesus is offered wine but refuses to take it before he is crucified. In John, Jesus is offered wine and does take it after he had already been put on the cross. In other words, there were 2 occasions when Jesus was offered wine. That Jesus was offered wine twice, before and after he was nailed to the cross, is as clear as anything can be. That is, it's as clear as anything can be if you read the relevant texts genuinely, instead of just cherry-picking out of context the verses you need in order to shoot a flashy TikTok video about your favorite Bible contradiction. Check out Mark's Gospel, where Jesus is crucified in chapter 15, verse 24. He is offered wine before being actually crucified, but refuses to take it, as we mentioned already. He is then said to be offered wine again after he's actually been put on the cross. That second time looks like Jesus actually drank the wine, though the skeptic might object that the text doesn't explicitly describe Jesus drinking the wine he is given. But in any case, it doesn't matter, because Mark doesn't say that Jesus did not drink the wine in that second instance, which means Mark doesn't contradict John. The same applies to Matthew's Gospel. Jesus is crucified in chapter 27, verse 35. He is offered wine before that, but refuses it. Then he is offered wine again while he hangs on the cross. As we saw in Mark already, at best, the text implies that Jesus actually drinks the wine, while at worst, it simply doesn't say whether Jesus did or didn't drink the wine he is given. And so, Again, however you turn it, there simply isn't a contradiction between Matthew and John.
What is my favorite contradiction in the Bible?
Well, it ain't the issue you offered us here, unless you're going to make the ridiculous claim that there's a contradiction between biblical stories, even when they don't contradict each other. Now, that wouldn't be a contradiction. What is a contradiction, however, is that the Bible seems to be okay with abortion while Christians are not. Well, that's at least what this TikToker over here thinks. And if you want to find out why he reads the Bible about as carelessly as our guy with his favorite Bible contradiction, click over here. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.